Hey, what's up? Dusk here. So I want to talk about the recent dev stream that Gunn put on for Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This was such a good dev stream, and is a stark contrast to how Gunn handles or behaves on Reddit. To the point that I think that Reddit's just not their forte. I guess they get overwhelmed or something. I don't know, but in a live stream environment, they're absolutely fantastic. I think because they can control like the traffic, like what they get bombarded by, so that they don't get overwhelmed. Uh, because they didn't just sit there and pick like softball easy questions. They were actually taking questions that were going to have answers that people weren't going to like, actual hard questions. I think they went through and answered pretty much every question the community had. They had some people behind the scenes that were helping condense a lot of similar questions into one question, but it would still cover, pretty much all those questions. So they essentially went through like 400 some questions and got them condensed down into 60. And then they went like almost an hour over on their dev stream just to make sure that I think they covered everything. And they really did. They handled it really well. They were super transparent. It was like it was like I went from being like, oh, okay, like a little lukewarm or so on Gun to back to being like really impressed with Gun. And so I've got a quick recap here for you, so that you don't have to watch the almost 2 hour long dev stream. I've got everything highlighted here really quick. So we'll start off with, we'll just go down the list here, right? So for the content that they've basically got like workshopped, it's on a board somewhere, kind of written out. It's an idea that is fleshed out, but they haven't put the work into, making it implemented in the game. But it's all kind of like like the fully fleshed out ideas are ready to go and be put in like the production pipeline, right? And they've got about 6 to 9 months of content that is basically ready to put in the pipeline and go. So that's that's where they are now. And they said as long as they have a player base, they said as long as there's people buying content and they have, a revenue stream that they can use to support further content, then they'll just keep going with TCM indefinitely. So that was some pretty good news. Let's see. Sorry. They say the patch cycles, now that they've got like all the fires put out in this mega patch that I covered in my last video, this 250 fixes mega patch. They said now that they're kind of like on a normal patch cycle, expect patches about every 30 to 45 days. Let's see. In-game currency is planned. That's actually something they wanted in at launch but couldn't get it. And by in-game currency, I mean like a currency that if you can't like afford to buy the DLCs, this is a way to like play the game a bunch and earn some currency where you can get some of the DLCs that way, essentially for free or at a discount. I think he said free, but I'm going to throw in the word discount just in case. So that's pretty cool. Challenges is something they want to do, an alternative way to earn experience points. That's something they wanted in at launch but couldn't get either. You probably know what a challenge is. A lot of video games have these where it's like, oh, do this one thing and then, get this reward of like bonus XP or whatever, right? So those will be challenges. Buffs to stealth are planned. And they were asked about like the rush meta and if they were going to do anything to curb that. And they said they really didn't want to remove play styles. They're like, if people are having fun playing the game that way, as long as it was appropriate, because rush is high risk, high reward. And they want to make sure that the risk reward is in balance. And as long as it is, then they're okay with people playing the game however they want. But the game was designed for stealth, and they have noticed that stealth does not seem to be as good. And the rewards there for stealth, like stealth is supposed to be kind of like low risk, low reward because you move really slow, right? So you don't get stuff done as well. So they're looking at buffing stealth to make sure that it's a more viable option, but they certainly don't want to remove anything else. So I thought that was a really good take there. Let's see. Okay, I've got a funny point. They were really surprised at they were like, there's a lot of horny people because this came to the request for like shirtless Johnny and things like that, and they were like, man, there's a lot of horny people. And my personal take on this is like, how can you guys be shocked? Come on, Wes. They claim to be super, super mega horror nerds, right? Like they're huge fans of the horror genre. They always have been. And come on, the horror genre is like the king of like topless nudity and all that that is really big in the horror genre. It's like, come on, you can't be surprised by by the horror genre and requests for shirtless Johnny. Come on, guy. All right, so and by the way, they did confirm shirtless Johnny is going to be a thing. It was they didn't plan it, but it was a huge community request, and his big thing was is that everybody who kept asking for it was always really polite and civilized, and they didn't berate anybody over it. And they're like, they just wanted to reward the section of their community that basically wasn't being all angry and there was no hostility in it. So that was pretty much the move behind shirtless Johnny, which I thought was kind of a five-head move on Wes's part. He's like, because this was a non-hostile, like this was a way to de-escalate hostility, which is again, like this is the opposite of what they were doing on Reddit, where they would actually be a little inflammatory. But this was like a brilliant way to really like de-escalate and put out fires. And it's like, see, looky here, the civility gets rewards. So that whole little take he did with that was pretty good. Okay, so back to some more serious stuff, and this is a big one. Get ready for this. The talks about people dodging because they don't want to play Leatherface. So they're going to make it where Leatherface is no longer mandatory. What? Now, they predict that people are going to see that Leatherface was a really important part of the puzzle, and they're going to be like, oh man, we actually need a Leatherface on the team. And they think people are going to go back to playing Leatherface because he's such an important figure. But Wes also opened up and said, but who knows, maybe, maybe I just don't see enough of the game to understand it, and people will figure out some really awesome metas without Leatherface, so I guess we'll see. So they're going to give us the chance as a community to see if this actually works. So yeah, Leatherface no longer mandatory. He declared again too that they're not going to do MMR. Or they're not going to do a skill. He specifically said skill-based MMR because the game does have an MMR system in it. I've been saying that since the beginning, and this pretty much confirmed it because he was very specific. He said not a skill-based MMR because it does have a level-based MMR. Sorry, I'm messing with my sock here. It does have a level-based MMR, and it has an MMR based on, like, if you're a pre-made, it tries to put you with other pre-mades. Now, they didn't confirm that, but myself and others have pretty much been able to verify that just by playing tons of games and just, seeing patterns, right? It's pretty easy to tell. But they don't ever want to do skill-based matchmaking. He said he would maybe consider it like way down the road, like once like maybe the game's getting kind of old and he sees that there's really entrenched parts of the community, like maybe then. But for the most part, like they really prefer to make like cinematic horror experiences in video games. Like the goal of what they do is to be like, here's a horror scenario. Can you escape or can you pull it off as the bad guy? So like that's what they want to do. Now, of course, my take is they've made a competitive game whether they want to acknowledge it or not. But that's the take that they're going to take, and they're not going to budge on that, unfortunately, because I would definitely like to see, if not skill-based matchmaking, at the very least like a ladder or something like that. Just because I feel like it gives a little bit more weight to every round you play. It makes you feel like you're working towards something, right? It lets you kind of have a little measure and stick to see if you're actually getting better. But that's That's just not going to happen, except for like maybe like way down the road. What is it, Kitty? Are you going to pop up here? My cat keeps hitting me. She's like, well, she's not hitting me. She keeps putting her paw on me like she wants to jump up. All right, hop up, Kitty. Let's see what else we got here. They also heavily hinted, well, they came out and said that they would love to get content from the other Texas Chainsaw Massacres, but they said getting the licensing for the other movies was actually pretty complicated. So they want to, but not only is it complicated to set up the license, but it's also complicated to see, like, the more rights holders something has, the more people they have to pay, and thus the more expensive it gets to acquire the license. And some things get to the point where they won't ever be able to make the money back that they paid to acquire the license. And so stuff like that will just permanently stay out of reach for them. But they do want to. One thing I will point out, though, is that he did name drop Jessica Biel, and he said her name like 2 or 3 times, which I kind of took as a hint. And he name dropped Chop Top specifically like 4 or 5 times. And I believe there's some rumors that there were some photos of the actor who played Chop Top already at the studio. So I don't know about the Jessica Biel thing. I just kind of noticed that it was mentioned a few times. But I felt like Chop Top, the name Chop Top was said with some frequency. Like you could tell that was in his mind. And to me, I took it as a soft hint that if we do get some licensed content, or if there is licensed content in the work, it's for Chop Top. But that's probably not anytime soon. That's probably something that's like 6 months out, right? So, yeah. And if we did get Chop Top, it would be a fully fleshed out standalone character. It wouldn't be a skin. Some other interesting facets is the characters Sissy and Johnny. While they are original characters, the original writer, Henkel, has been working with them quite a bit. And Henkel had this notebook of a whole bunch of characters that never made it into any of his movies, but he was just constantly creating personalities and characters and stuff like that. And they're actually using his notebook and input from him when they created Johnny and Sissy, and that goes for some of their other characters. Let's see. And last but not least, there are map reworks for gas station. They're gonna, lock up the front door on the smokehouse room, and on the slaughterhouse, they're gonna move the pressure tank above ground. Pressure tank is getting a light rework. When family turns it off, it's going to depressurize. So that's a big deal. It means that if Vicks want to brute force it, they're going to have to turn the pressure tank back on pretty quick. Now, he didn't say how quick it was going to depressurize. It might be instant. But I assume it's going to be a slow bleed off. That would make the most sense, right? But that means that it's not something where you can just do the pressure tank once and then, just periodically come back to it and just have this essentially like imaginary map pressure. Like family gets to walk away from pressure tank if they want, once that's set up. Fuse, of course, is different. Once fuse is set up, you can always pull the handle, but family can body block the door with like a big guy like Leatherface or Johnny, and family can turn the fuse box back off. So that's the counterplay for fuse, and now pressure tank is going to have appropriate counterplay as well. They also said that pressure tank was meant to be one of the harder escapes to pull off, not an easier escape, and so that's why they're doing things that way. And almost everything they talked about should come out this month. How crazy is that? Now, obviously not Chop Top, and I don't think Shirtless Johnny either. So that was the most exciting news, is that this was all happening pretty quickly. Now, of course, they didn't handle everything perfectly. They don't have to be perfect, right? This is normal human being response in a live environment. The only reason I bring it up is because I do think it's kind of important to see people as people and to acknowledge that some mistakes are okay. And it's more about like the overall result, like where are they basically going? What's the general message? It was just really good. It was really good, and I was really impressed with how they handled everything. So anyway, that's pretty much it. Super excited. You should be super excited too if you like this game. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.